no matter how you define Pax Americana, Pax Americana is coming to an end. And this year is the beginning of the end of Pax Americana.
你敢入侵伊朗，就要准备好承受后果。这句话从一位中国学者口中说出，震撼了整个西方舆论圈。说这话的人叫高志凯，中国著名律师学者。此刻，美国与以色列正联手对伊朗发动侵略战争，而中国站在了历史正确的一边，既帮美以战争贩子算盘打得震天响，以为手握铁穹防御系统就能将伊朗踩在脚下，以为坐拥全球800多个军事基地就能对主权国家予取予求。更阴险的是，他们与伊朗虚与为蛇，假意谈判，话音未落，炸弹已然落下。这种背信弃义，连联合国秘书长都公开斥之为侵略战争。没想到伊朗用不对称战争把美以吹嘘多年的防御神话打得体无完肤，而高志凯教授早已洞察一切，一字一句给出了这个时代最热血沸腾的警告。让我们来看这场对话究竟说了什么。
We are on the brink of the convergence of these three crises: energy crisis, economic crisis, and the financial crisis. And the only way to avert this is to bring this war to an end. So it is in the court of the United States and Israel to stop the war right away.
Why not create an entirely different reality? Because I think a lot of people think that there's no changing U.S. behaviors. I mean, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, certainly not mid-war. Why not? I mean, is this not an opportunity for rising powers like Russia and China, who, by the way, alongside Iran, have long proposed a new security architecture for the Persian Gulf that includes only the littoral states guaranteeing security, right? Is this not an opportunity, while the U.S. may continue with its bluster and its bombing, et cetera, to just bypass that and come to an agreement between Iran and its neighbors? I mean, I think for its Persian Gulf Arab neighbors, this is an extremely critical time for them, and they're not sure that the Americans are even paying attention, and they're their allies. Is this not an opportune moment for Beijing to try to wrangle a new kind of arrangement in this region that circumvents and almost forces the Americans to the negotiating table because it's lost an important card? I need not remind you that it was this US president who years ago said, why are we spending $8 trillion on Persian Gulf security? And China just comes and gets its oil and gas, with nothing, no expenditures. Why are we carrying that burden? So is this not a time for an opportunity for Beijing to do, through back channels, to help push forth a new security arrangements for Arab Persian Gulf countries that must be, absolutely incensed right now, not just on the receiving side of Iranian hits, but also having to contend with constant barrage of U.S. demands to launch from their territories?
Well, two points on my part. The first point is that indeed, as this war of aggression against Iran launched by the United States and Israel has fully exposed, the greatest certainty in the world of today is the uncertainty of President Trump and his government. And the greatest predictability in the world of today is the unpredictability of President Trump and his government. This is the reality. I think more and more people should agree with what I just now said. Now, the second point is equally, if not even more important. For example, if an elephant falls into a ditch for whatever reason, there are three things you need to do in sequence. The first thing is to try your best to pull the elephant out of the ditch. That's number one. Number two is to figure out why this elephant fell into the ditch or is being pushed into the ditch. Now, then the third point you need to do is to figure out how to prevent any other elephant from falling into the ditch into the future. Now, we are in the first step of this three-step sequence. And I don't think you can do these three steps out of sequence or in the wrong sequence. So we need to do whatever we can do to pull the elephant out of the ditch first. And there are difficulties and there are almost impossibilities to pull the elephant out from this ditch right now. Now, it is only when we reach the second stage can we really have the luxury and have the wisdom and the courage to figure out why this elephant fell into the ditch, why the United States and Israel dared to launch this war of aggression against Iran, etc. And then when we reach the third stage, we need to do whatever we can to come up with anything that can be reconstructed to prevent another war from happening. So I think we need to do this in the right sequence. First step, followed with the second step and the third step. If you jump out of the sequence, maybe you will be very courageous in trying that, but the result may not be as what you wanted. So I think for the moment, of the top priority and the greatest urgency is to put this war, pull the war out of its normal course and stop the war right away. And then we need to figure out what exactly needs to happen to prevent the outbreak of another war. We are in the first step right now, rather than in the second step or in the third step.
Victor, West Asians who despise U.S. hegemony in their region often now lash out at China and Russia and other middle states or rising powers for not acting more decisively on major catastrophes like this war and the Gaza genocide, which we've all sat through for 2.5 years. When I was in Shanghai last October, I was often told that Beijing doesn't seek to replicate the behaviors of the American global policeman and it's insert itself into all conflicts everywhere. But does this not also hinder China's ability to move the world into a international law-abiding or a multipolar reality?
No, I don't think so. I think for China, there are several things very important for China to do. First of all, on such important matters impacting directly on war or peace for mankind, China needs to stand on the right side of history, meaning we need to call on the United States and Israel to stop this war of aggression against Iran. Now, secondly, whether China needs to be materially or physically be involved in this war, then we need to think really very profound questions. For example, whether China's direct participation will help putting a stop to this war or may add more fuel onto the fire and to make this war even worse, for example. This is truly one of the most important and most subtle philosophical questions that mankind can really think about. Sometimes by condemning it in unequivocal terms, making our position well known to the world may be better. And without physically being involved in the war, may turn out to be a better and more sound choice. Why? Because allow me to share with you my own concern. This war, launched by the United States and Israel against Iran, after so many days, already contains almost all the ingredients which may flare up into a larger regional war or even a global war. And there is real concern that one party or another or whatever may even go to the extreme of using a nuclear weapon. Therefore, we need to put out the fire right away rather than allow it to continue the conflagration and continue or even constitute an even larger, even graver menace to mankind. This is not the time to pour more fuel onto this fire. This is the time to tell the United States and tell Israel in unequivocal terms that you don't have any right to launch this war of aggression against Iran. And all of us need to support Iran spiritually, for example, in legal terms, etc. And then all mankind as a whole need to unite together to put an end to the war, rather than further expanding the war or to escalating the war. So I think this is the moment for different countries, different political leaders or statesmen to use their own wisdom to make a decision as to what they need to do and whether they want to be on the right side of history or the wrong side of history. Now, on the other hand, allow me to make a point, which is a very profound point. I think when history looks back at this year, the year of 2026, because of what the United States has been doing since the beginning of this year, for example, launching this war of aggression against Iran, launching military actions against Venezuela, abducting, hijacking the president of Venezuela and the first lady, for example, and threatening Canada with taking over Canada, threatening Greenland, threatening to violate the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Denmark, threatening wars against so many other countries. The history in the future will look back at the year 2026 and mark it as the beginning of the end of Pax Americana. No matter how you define Pax Americana is coming to an end. And this year is the beginning of the end of Pax Americana. Whatever President Trump and his government are doing right now only have one result or one impact. That is to further accelerate the demise of Pax Americana. Therefore, philosophically speaking, we need to be very much convinced about this almost inevitable turn in history, the course of history is being played out, and we do not need to rush it. It will come to an end under its own weight. And what President Trump and his government are doing are accelerating the final curtain fall for Pax Americana.
Let's look at this current war against Iran from your point of view, not Beijing's, okay? Just you as an analyst. Here, I'd appreciate some of your famous frank talk, okay? What are the benefits for China as this war continues? And I mean, we know the negatives. You outlined those things. This affects the world. It affects energy trade, which China needs. It affects, international relations. We could be on the cusp of World War III. But let's talk about some of the benefits that China could gain. And I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean it in a geopolitical way, just pure assessment and analysis. Do you not think, for instance, that Iran's demand that cargo traversing through the Strait of Hormuz must settle payments in yuan and potentially other non-Western currencies? Is this not a net gain for not just the Chinese, but also their multipolar goals, from the BRICS to the SCO, from sort of creating new payment platforms the world around, and to put an end to Pax Americana? Tell me that side of it. Let's look at what the net gains could be.
Let me tell you my real feeling, and let me open up my mind and my heart to you. As far as China is concerned, there is no single net benefit for China at all for this war. This war is a war of aggression, and there are war crimes committed against the people in Iran, and there are shocking developments in this war. And there is no single benefit I can ever think about as far as China is concerned. China is completely calling for an immediate end to this war and for thorough investigations into any possible war crimes or crimes against humanity being committed in the course of this war. And for any country to dare to launch a war of aggression in the middle of an ongoing negotiation should be really investigated. And if any country believes and will do some calculation as to whether I gain more or lose more, probably that's not a real good exercise at all. So let me tell you, and hopefully through you, to your audience in the world, that we need to do whatever we can. We need to engage in international cooperation to put pressure on all the parties concerned to stop this war immediately.
Many people talk about Iran using Beidou, the Chinese Beidou system. But that doesn't, I'm sure, that's instead of GPS, right? The American GPS system. So that could be for civilian applications. We have now seen a proliferation from private Chinese satellite companies, some who don't have satellites in space, but lease or rent or have access to, putting pictures of what the Americans and Israelis and their Gulf partners would clearly see as, providing verification of hits on Gulf territories. Those things cannot have been done without the okay, I imagine, of the government in Beijing. Maybe you can't go into details, but do you think that there is critical material support from Beijing to its SCO and BRICS partner, Iran, in preparation and in advancement of Iran's self-defense?
Allow me to mention the Beidou positioning system is one of the most sophisticated and the most efficient positioning system in the world. In many cases, it's actually more efficient than GPS. Secondly, I think almost all the countries in the world, about 200 of them, use one form or another the services provided by the Beidou positioning system. That is not a secret. That is an open fact. And Beidou system runs, for example, its ground stations and other services in multiple countries in the world. Therefore, if any country pretends to be shocked that another country like Iran uses Beidou system, holy cow, their shock is completely unwarranted because Beidou system is an open system. Anyone can use it if, for example, they use that for their normal and legal purposes. Now, Iran right now is exercising right of self-defense. Iran is being invaded. Iran is being bombed out by other countries which deliberately invaded Iran. Iran is fighting for its own survival. Therefore, if anyone in Iran wants to use services as provided in the public by Beidou, no one should be surprised. It is not going to be construed as a Chinese military support for Iran in its war against Israel or against the United States. I would say anyone who demands that China should discontinue the Beidou service to any other particular country in the world doesn't know how to respect China. China will never give them any attention if they don't have any justification to demand that China need to discontinue China's service to any other country. The Beidou service is global. Anyone, any country in the world can use that.
And then the US president hinted that he might cancel his trip to Beijing to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Just a quick response from you. How was that viewed in the Chinese media and the political chattering classes?
Well, first of all, the originally proposed state visit by President Trump to China is generally viewed as a very important event, but the whole planning started back in, for example, November and December 2025. It's way before the outbreak of this hostility involving Iran, launched by the United States and Israel. That's number one. Number two is that right now, I think the White House, as well as the Secretary of the Treasury, Bessent, said that if President Trump has to delay or postpone the state visit to China, it has nothing to do with anything else, but with the fact that President Trump's presence in Washington is direly demanded because the United States is still in the middle of this war. Therefore, actually, one way is for the United States to make up its mind to stop the war right away, so his visit to China will not be postponed. That's number one. Number two, if the United States wants to continue with this war, causing more and more upheaval and havoc to international energy security, economic security, financial security, for example, then probably President Trump will have nowhere to go other than bunkering down in Washington, D.C. And the more and the longer this war is prolonged, the more consequences the United States will suffer. I'm afraid that this war, if it is continued, the Republican Party most likely will lose either the House or the Senate or both in the midterm election. And if that happens, President Trump may become a lame duck president, and he will be really cornered after January the 20th, 2027. So for his own political consideration, for the Republican Party's consideration, and for containing the three major crises, the energy crisis, the economic crisis, and the financial crisis, which are brewing right now as we speak in the United States and in the world, from exploding into one of the most lethal and destructive crises in human history, I would call on President Trump to stop the war right away and find a dignified way to stop the war and to make peace with Iran. Never dare to invade and launch a war of aggression against a country with more than 5,000, if not 6,000 years of history and civilization, a proud Muslim country, a proud Shiite Muslim country in the world. You dare to invade Iran, be prepared for the consequences. Don't waste the blood of the American soldiers on the soil of Iran.
看完这场对话，我心里只有4个字：大快人心。高志凯教授说的不是官方外交辞令，是我们这一代人在无数场被西方媒体围攻的夜晚最渴望听到的那种清醒与硬气。这场战争的本质说穿了就是典型的霸权焦虑症在作祟。美国和以色列看着伊朗越来越强，看着人民币的国际结算份额正宠不到 3%， 一路向 30% 攀升，看着中国制造业的全球产出已超过美国、欧盟、日本的总和，他们坐不住了，越坐不住越想动手。这就是零和博弈思维的最坏版本，我强，你必须弱，你敢崛起，我就用炸弹回答你。高志凯教授在节目里讲了一个我们中国人最熟悉的比喻，大象掉进了坑，你得先想办法把它拉出来，再去追究为什么掉坑，最后才是规划如何防止下次再掉。偏偏这些西方精英连基本的逻辑顺序都搞不清楚，恨不得一边拉大象一边追责，一边规划新的地区秩序，结果呢，大象还在坑里，战火却越烧越旺。更让人窒息的事实是，伊朗这个被美国制裁了几十年的国家，愣是用不对称战争把铁穹打穿了，把爱国者导弹打没了，逼着美国把部署在南韩的萨德雷达紧急调回去护以色列的安全。日本、南韩坐在那里看着这一幕，你以为的铁杆盟友，在最关键的时刻，连给你的安全承诺都可以打折出售。讽刺吗？太讽刺了。在我们看来，这场战争的每一天都在加速一件事：美国制式的终结。高志凯教授说，2026年将被后人记为美利坚制式开始落幕的那一年。 从伊朗到委内瑞拉，从格陵兰到加拿大，这个曾经高喊国际秩序捍卫者的国家，正在用自己的双手一块一块地拆散自己的信誉。我们中国有句古话，得道多助，失道寡助。5000年文明告诉我们，任何依靠武力维持的秩序都不可能长久，历史的车轮从不为任何帝国停留。所以最后这句话送给特朗普政府，你们用战争砸碎的不只是伊朗的城市，是美国制式最后那一块遮羞布。你们觉得自己在让美国再次伟大，但在全世界眼里，你们正在亲手书写自己的讣告。